They say you never really know your children until you have to ask them for a favor. I always thought that was just something bitter people said. People who didn't have a bond like I did with my son, Eddie. I thought we were different. I thought I had raised a boy who understood that family is a two-way street. But looking back, maybe it was always a one-way street, and I was just the one paving the road year after year. My name is Peggy. I'm 68 years old, and for the last 6 months, my life has been measured in Tylenol doses and how many steps it takes to get from the bedroom to the kitchen. It's my hip. The doctor calls it severe osteoarthritis, but that fancy medical term doesn't capture the feeling of bone grinding against bone every time I try to stand up to make a pot of coffee. It's a sharp, hot pain that takes your breath away. I've always been independent. That's my pride. When my husband passed 10 years ago, everyone worried about how I'd cope. But I managed. I kept the house clean. I paid my bills on time. And I never, ever asked for help. In fact, I was usually the one giving it. I'm the mother who dipped into her retirement savings to help Eddie and his wife, Eugenia, with the down payment on their first house. I'm the one who paid for the transmission repair on Eddie's truck 3 years ago when he said he might lose his job if he couldn't get to work. I did it quietly. I did it happily, because that's what mothers do. We are the safety net. But safety nets wear out eventually. Last Tuesday, my doctor sat me down and stopped using gentle words. He told me the cortisone shots weren't working anymore. I needed a total hip replacement, and I needed it soon if I wanted to walk without a cane for the rest of my life. I sat in his office, nodding, doing the math in my head. Medicare covers a lot, but it doesn't cover everything. There are copays, deductibles, and the cost of the specialized rehab facility afterwards because I live alone and can't care for myself in those first crucial weeks. The total out-of-pocket cost I was looking at was about $5,000. To some people, that's a vacation. To me, on a fixed Social Security income, that is a mountain I cannot climb. I have some savings, a rainy day fund, but I had drained a large chunk of it last Christmas to help Eddie and Eugenia fix their furnace. I had about $2,000 left. I was short. I went home and stared at the phone for 2 days. My pride was fighting a war with my pain, and the pain was winning. I told myself it would be okay. I wasn't asking for a handout. I was asking my family. The same family I had supported for decades. Surely, between Eddie's job at the logistics firm and Eugenia's salary, they could loan me the difference. I wasn't even going to ask for a gift. I would pay them back, $50 a month if I had to. I waited until 7 p.m. after dinner when I knew they would be relaxed. I dialed the number, my heart hammering in my chest like a nervous teenager. "Hey, Mom," Eddie answered. He sounded tired, or maybe just distracted. I could hear the TV on in the background. "Hi, honey," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Do you have a minute? I need to talk to you about something important." He sighed. It was a small sound, but I heard it. "Yeah, sure. What's going on? Everything okay with the house?" "The house is fine," I said. "It's my hip, Eddie. The doctor says I can't put off the surgery anymore. I can barely walk to the mailbox." "Oh," he said. "Well, that's good, right? Getting it fixed." "It is," I hesitated, gripping the phone cord. "The problem is the cost. Insurance covers most of it, but I'm short on the copay and the rehab stay. I'm short about $3,000. I wouldn't ask if I had any other choice. Eddie, you know that. But I was wondering if you and Eugenia could help me out. I'd pay you back." The silence on the other end of the line stretched out. It was heavy and uncomfortable. I heard him shift the phone. "Mom," he started, and his tone had changed. It was that specific tone people use when they are preparing to let you down, gently. "I wish you had asked us at a different time. We are just We are really stretched right now. Broke, honestly. Broke. I asked, confused. I knew they had just come back from a weekend trip to the coast. Ideally, yes, he continued, rushing his words. The economy is a mess. Groceries are up, gas is up. Our mortgage rate adjusted. We are barely keeping our heads above water. We just don't have $3,000 lying around. My heart sank. I felt a flush of embarrassment heat up my face. Oh, I didn't realize things were that tight. I'm sorry, Eddie. It's just a bad time, he said, sounding relieved that I was backing down. Then I heard Eugenia's voice in the background. It was sharp and loud. Is that your mother? What does she want? She needs money for her hip surgery. Eddie mumbled, likely trying to cover the receiver, but he didn't do a good job. There was a shuffling sound, and suddenly Eugenia was on the line. She didn't say hello. She didn't ask how I was feeling. Peggy, she said, her voice crisp and impatient. Eddie is too nice to say it plainly, but we cannot fund your medical bills. We have our own future to think about. I understand, Eugenia, I said, my voice trembling. I just thought since I helped with the furnace last year. That was a gift, she cut me off. You can't hold gifts over people's heads. Look, if you can't afford the surgery, maybe you just don't need it right now. I can't walk without pain, Eugenia, I whispered. And then she said it, the words that would replay in my mind every single night for the next month. She laughed, a short, dry sound without a shred of humor in it. Well, then just stay in bed, Mom. You're retired. You don't need to go anywhere. Just stay in bed. And you'll save us all some money if you don't move around so much. She didn't wait for a response. I heard the click, and then the line went dead. I sat there in my kitchen chair, holding the silent phone against my ear. The humiliation washed over me like cold water. Just stay in bed. As if I were an old dog that had become inconvenient. As if my quality of life meant nothing compared to their bank account balance. But as I sat there, wiping a tear from my cheek, the old habit kicked in. The mother's habit. I started making excuses for them. They must really be in trouble, I thought. Eddie wouldn't say no unless they were on the brink of ruin. Eugenia is stressed. She didn't mean to be so cruel. It's the stress talking. I convinced myself that I was the one in the wrong for asking. I was the burden. I placed the phone back on the receiver gently. I looked at the paperwork for the surgery lying on the table. I wasn't going to cancel it. I couldn't, but I knew one thing for sure. I was on my own. I would have to figure this out, even if it meant emptying every last penny I had to my name. Little did I know, while I was sitting there worrying about how to save the money, they were already planning how to spend theirs. I didn't sleep much that night after Eugenia told me to just stay in bed. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling fan, listening to the silence of the house. My hip throbbed with a dull, rhythmic ache, a constant reminder that staying in bed wasn't a solution. It was a prison sentence. By the time the sun started peeking through the blinds, I had made up my mind. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to call them back and plead my case. If they were truly broke, as Eddie said, then pushing them would only cause a rift I couldn't repair. A mother's job is to protect her children, not burden them. So I decided I would handle it myself. The next morning, I got dressed slowly, wincing as I pulled on my slacks. I drove down to the bank, the same branch I've used for 30 years. I sat across from a young woman named Sarah, who smiled politely as I handed her my passbook. I need to close out my emergency savings account. I told her. My voice was calm, but my stomach was in knots. That account was my shield. It was money my late husband, Frank, and I had scraped together over decades. It was the roof leak money, the furnace breakdown money. It was the only thing standing between me and financial ruin if something went wrong with the house. Seeing that balance drop to near zero felt like walking out onto a tightrope without a net. Sarah typed away on her computer. "Are you sure, Mrs. Martinez? This account has a good interest rate. If you withdraw it all now, you'll lose the accrued interest for this quarter." "I'm sure," I said. "I have a medical bill to pay." I watched her count out the cashier's check. It covered the gap for the surgery, but it left me with almost nothing for the month's living expenses. I walked out of the bank feeling lighter because the surgery was paid for, but heavier because my security was gone. I sat in my car in the parking lot for a long time, gripping the steering wheel, telling myself I was doing the right thing. I was saving my son from stress. That was worth the price, wasn't it? Then came the cutting back. You don't realize how expensive life has become until you have to count every single penny. I went to the grocery store that afternoon with a calculator in my purse. Usually I buy the good coffee, the dark roast I like. It's my one little luxury in the morning. I reached for it, saw the price tag had gone up again, and put it back. I grabbed the generic tin from the bottom shelf instead. I walked past the butcher counter. No more pot roast for Sunday dinner. I bought a bag of dried beans and rice. I bought the bruised apples from the clearance bin. I stood in the aisle debating whether I really needed paper towels or if I could just use rags. I chose the rags. It felt humiliating. Honestly, I've worked my whole life. Frank worked his whole life. We played by the rules. And here I was 68 years old debating a $3 difference in laundry detergent because my hip had given out. When I got home, I made the phone call I had been dreading. I called the cable company. "I need to cancel my service," I told the representative. "We can offer you a bundle deal," he tried to argue. "We can lower your rate by $10. "I can't afford the $10, I said firmly. "Please just turn it off." The TV screen went black an hour later. That hit harder than the coffee. When you live alone, the voices on the television are sometimes the only company you have all day. Without it, the house felt enormous and hollow. I sat in my armchair, the silence pressing in on my ears, and I just cried. Not for long, just for a minute. I let myself feel the fear of being poor, truly poor, for the first time in years. But even as I sat there eating my beans and rice for dinner, my mind drifted back to Eddie. I looked at the picture of him and Eugenia on the mantelpiece. If I was struggling this much to scrape together $3,000, how bad must it be for them? My heart ached for my son. He had sounded so defeated on the phone. Broke, he had said. I imagined them sitting in their kitchen, looking at a stack of overdue bills, maybe afraid they'd lose their house. I felt a pang of guilt for even asking them in the first place. I should have known better. I should have sensed they were in trouble. Maybe I can help them. I thought. It sounds crazy, I know. Here I was drinking bad coffee and sitting in a silent house to save money, and I was plotting how to help the people who had just refused to help me. But that's the good mother trap. You can't turn it off. I thought once I get this surgery done and I'm walking again, I can go over there and cook for them a few times a week. I can bring them leftovers that will save them on grocery bills. Maybe I can offer to clean their house so they don't have to pay a service. I was already planning my own recovery around how to make their lives easier. I wanted to be the solution, never the problem. The next day, I called the hospital to finalize the booking. The surgery coordinator, a nice lady named Brenda, went over the details. "Now, Mrs. Martinez, we have you scheduled for Tuesday. For your recovery stay, we have a few options. Your insurance covers a semi-private room, which is shared with another patient. Or, for an additional $200 a night, you can upgrade to a private room. It's much quieter, you get your own bathroom, and the shared room is fine. I interrupted quickly. Are you sure? She asked. Hip surgery recovery can be tough. The shared rooms can be a bit active. A private room ensures you get better rest. I thought about the $200 a night. That was 2 weeks of groceries. That was the electric bill. No, the shared room is fine. I repeated, I don't need anything fancy. I just need to get walked out of here. Okay, semi-private it is, she said, marking it down. I hung up and looked around my living room. I had stripped my life down to the bare bones to make this happen. I had sold my security, canceled my comfort, and lowered my standard of living. But I had done it. I was going to get my surgery, and I hadn't taken a dime from my son. That night, packing my small suitcase with my worn-out pajamas and a paperback book, I felt a strange sense of resolve. I was scared of the surgery. Yes, I was scared of the rehab, but mostly I was scared of the future. I wondered if this was how it was going to be for the rest of my life, scrimping, saving, and sitting in the dark, so I didn't bother anyone. I went to sleep that night praying for 2 things, that the surgery would go well, and that Eddie and Eugenia would find their way out of their financial trouble. I fell asleep worrying about them. I fell asleep wishing I could do more for them. If only I had known that while I was eating rice and beans to save pennies, they were getting ready to spend thousands on something that would break my heart completely. If you have never spent a night in a semi-private hospital room, count your blessings. The word private is doing a lot of heavy lifting in that phrase. It's really just a small room divided by a thin, flimsy curtain that doesn't block sound, smell, or the reality that you are sharing your most vulnerable moments with a total stranger. My surgery had gone well, technically speaking. The surgeon said the new hip joint was seated perfectly, but the recovery, that was a different story. I was in room 304, bed B. Bed A was occupied by a woman named Mrs. Higgins, who was nice enough, but she had a very large, very loud family. They were there from visiting hours start to finish, laughing, eating fast food that smelled like grease and onions, and watching game shows on the TV at full volume. I lay in my bed, staring at the beige ceiling tiles, trying to breathe through the pain. The nerve block was wearing off, and the deep, throbbing ache in my hip was waking up. Every time I pressed the button for the nurse, I felt guilty, like I was bothering them. I felt so small. I kept thinking about Eddie and Eugenia. I checked my phone constantly, hoping for a text. Thinking of you, Mom. Hope the surgery went well. Nothing. Just the radio silence that had started the moment they hung up on me. By the second afternoon, I was going stir-crazy. The noise from Mrs. Higgins' side of the curtain was unbearable. The nurse, a sturdy woman named Clara, came in to check my vitals. You need to move, Peggy, Clara said, checking my chart. Blood flow is key. If you don't walk, you don't heal. Do you feel up for a lap around the floor? I think I'd walk on broken glass just to get some peace and quiet. I joked, though it wasn't really a joke. Clara helped me sit up. The room spun for a second. The pain was sharp, but I gritted my teeth. I grabbed the walker, the ugly gray metal frame with the tennis balls on the bottom, and hoisted myself up. I shuffled out into the hallway, my hospital gown flapping slightly in the back, my non-slip yellow socks gripping the linoleum. I did my assigned laps. Shuffle, step, shuffle, step. I focused on the rhythm. I decided to walk a little further than usual toward the East Wing. I knew the hospital layout vaguely. The East Wing was the newer addition. It was where the administrative offices and the specialty suites were. It was usually quieter down there. As I crossed the threshold from the main ward to the East Wing, the atmosphere changed. The floors weren't scuffed linoleum anymore. They were a soft, muted carpet that absorbed sound. The lighting wasn't that harsh fluorescent buzz. It was warmer, softer. It even smelled better, like fresh coffee and flowers instead of antiseptic and cafeteria food. I was just about to turn around, feeling out of place in my tattered gown, when the elevator doors at the end of the hall dinged open. My breath hitched in my throat. Stepping out of the elevator were two people I knew better than anyone, Eddie and Eugenia. For a split second, my heart leaped. They came, I thought. They figured out I was here, and they came to surprise me. I almost called out to them. I almost waved. But then I froze. They weren't looking for room 304. They were walking confidently in the opposite direction, deeper into the VIP wing. And they weren't empty-handed. Eddie was carrying a massive bouquet of balloons, silver and gold ones that screamed, "Get well soon," in fancy script. Eugenia was holding a gift basket that looked heavier than my walker. It was wrapped in cellophane and filled with what looked like expensive chocolates, imported fruits, and a bottle of sparkling juice. I panicked. I didn't want them to see me looking like this. Unwashed hair, hospital gown, shuffling like an old woman. Instinct took over. I pulled my walker behind a large janitorial cart that was parked near a linen closet. I made myself small, my heart hammering against my ribs so hard I thought it would pop my stitches. They walked right past me. They were talking and laughing. They didn't look like people who were broke. They didn't look like people who were stressed about mortgages or groceries. They looked carefree. I peeked around the side of the cart. They stopped at the double doors of the corner suite, the presidential suite. The sign said it was the kind of room that wasn't covered by insurance. It was cash only, thousands of dollars a night, meant for executives and VIPs who wanted hospital care with hotel luxury. The door was propped open. From my hiding spot, I had a direct line of sight into the room. I saw her, sitting up in a wide, plush bed that looked nothing like my narrow cot, was Eugenia's mother, Beatrice. She wasn't hooked up to IVs. She wasn't in a cast. She was wearing a silk robe, a beautiful, shimmering pink thing. And she was reading a magazine. On the rolling table in front of her, there wasn't a plastic tray of hospital slop. There was a porcelain plate with a croissant, fresh fruit, and a real teapot. Eddie and Eugenia breezed into the room. "There she is," Eugenia announced, her voice bright and cheerful. "The patient of the hour." Beatrice looked up and smiled, putting down her magazine. "Oh, you two, you shouldn't have." "Nonsense," Eddie said. "I watched my son who told me he couldn't spare a dime, walk over and kiss his mother-in-law on the cheek. He set the balloons down. We wanted to make sure you were comfortable, B. How is the suite?" Eugenia asked, setting the heavy basket on the side table. "Is the bed soft enough?" I told them to bring the memory foam topper. "It's divine," Beatrice sighed dramatically. "Much better than home. I just needed this rest. The stress of the bridge club drama was just too much for my nerves. I was purely exhausted. I felt the blood drain from my face. My hands gripped the cold metal of the walker, so tight my knuckles turned white. Exhaustion? She was in a VIP suite for exhaustion? Eugenia laughed, patting her mother's hand. "Well, you deserve it, Mom. We told you, didn't we? Nothing but the best for you. We weren't going to let you recover in some noisy, shared room with the general public. You need your peace." The words hit me like a physical slap. A noisy, shared room with the general public. That was exactly where I was. That was where they had left me. "You kids are too generous," Beatrice cooed, reaching for a chocolate from the basket. "This must be costing a fortune." "Don't worry about the cost," Eddie said, waving his hand dismissively. The same hand that had held the phone when he told me they were drowning in debt. "We handled it. We just want you back on your feet for the summer trip." I couldn't watch anymore. My stomach churned with a mix of nausea and pure, hot rage. The room started to spin again. But this time it wasn't from the medication. It was from the betrayal. They weren't broke. They had never been broke. They had lied to my face. They had listened to me beg for help with a surgery I needed to walk, and they had turned me down so they could spend thousands on a luxury vacation in a hospital for a woman who was just tired. I had eaten beans and rice. I had sat in the dark. I had humiliated myself at the bank, all so they could buy silk robes and memory foam toppers for Beatrice. I slowly turned my walker around. I didn't storm in there. I didn't scream. I couldn't. I was too shocked. I shuffled back down the hallway, the sound of their laughter fading behind me, but echoing loudly in my head. The walk back to my room felt miles longer than the walk there. Every step was a reminder of my pain, and now a reminder of my worth in their eyes. I was the mother to be discarded. Beatrice was the mother to be pampered. I got back to room 304. Mrs. Higgins' family was shouting at the TV again. The room smelled like stale fries. I climbed back into my hard, uncomfortable bed and pulled the thin blanket up to my chin. I didn't cry this time. The tears were gone. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to the noise, but all I could hear was Eugenia's voice. "Just stay in bed, Mom. You'll save us some money." And then I heard Eddie's voice. "Don't worry about the cost. We handled it." Something inside me shifted then. It wasn't sadness anymore. It was something colder, something harder. The mother who wanted to cook them casseroles and clean their house vanished in that moment. They wanted to save money. Fine. I stared at the water stain on the ceiling tile and made a silent vow. I was going to help them save money. I was going to save them every single penny I had ever spent on them. And they were going to feel every cent of it. I didn't storm into that VIP suite. I didn't throw open the double doors and demand an explanation. I didn't scream at my son or toss the fruit basket across the room. Old Peggy might have cried. Dramatic Peggy might have made a scene. But the woman standing behind that janitorial cart wasn't either of those people anymore. I felt something inside me snap, but it wasn't a loud break. It was quiet. It was the sound of a lock clicking shut. I turned my walker around and shuffled back to my room. The hallway seemed longer than before, but my head was clearer. For years, I had told myself I was being a supportive mother. I told myself that my sacrifices were just what you did for family. But as I lay back down in my bed, listening to the noise of the ward, I finally admitted the truth to myself. I wasn't a safety net. I was a doormat. And the thing about doormats is that people don't just step on them. They wipe their feet on them before walking into the comfort of a room they actually respect. I checked out of the hospital 2 days later. No one came to pick me up. Eddie didn't call. Eugenia didn't text. I called a taxi service that specializes in medical transport. The driver, a kind man named Samuel, had to help me get my walker into the trunk. It cost me $45 plus tip. Money I shouldn't have been spending, but I paid it without a flinch. When I got home, the house was stuffy. It smelled like stale air and old dust. It was the smell of a life that had been put on pause. I sat down at my kitchen table, still wearing my coat, my hip throbbing with a dull, persistent ache. I looked at the mail piled up on the counter. Bills. Flyers. More bills. Usually when I get home from a trip or a procedure, I rest. I put my feet up. But not today. A cold energy was moving through me. I reached for the old accordion file box I keep on the bottom shelf of the pantry. It's marked Family Finances. It's dusty because I don't like to look at it often. It reminds me of how much I give and how little I keep. I dumped the files onto the kitchen table. I put on my reading glasses and started digging. I wasn't looking for spare change. I was looking for evidence. I needed to see exactly how much of my fixed income was actually fixing their lives. The first thing I found was the insurance policy. For the last 5 years, I have carried the family bundle for auto and home insurance. It started when Eddie lost his job a few years back. He had asked me to put their cars and their home on my policy to get the multi-generational discount. He promised to pay me back the difference every month. I pulled out the calculator. The total premium was $450 a month. My share for my old sedan and my small house was about $150. Their share for their 2 newer cars and their larger home was $300. $300 a month. I checked my bank statements. I scrolled back 3 years. I saw sporadic transfers from Eddie, $50 here, $100 there. But for the last 12 months, nothing, not a dime. I had been paying the full $300 for them every single month. That was $3,600 a year. That was more than the cost of the rehab stay I had just denied myself. I stared at the paper. They told me they were broke, but they were driving cars insured by my Social Security check. Then I found the car loan papers. I dug deeper into the file. There it was, the loan for Eddie's truck. It was a big, shiny pickup he bought 4 years ago. I remembered that day. His credit score had been a few points too low to get the prime interest rate, so he had begged me to co-sign. "It's just a formality, Mom," he had said. "It helps me build credit." I looked at the terms. The loan was coming up for a refinancing clause, something about a balloon payment restructuring that required a signature to keep the monthly rate low. The paperwork had been sitting on my desk for weeks. Eddie had mentioned he needed me to sign it whenever I got a chance so they could keep their low payments. If I didn't sign it, or if I removed my name from the guarantee, the bank would recalculate the loan based on his credit alone. His rate would skyrocket. I sat back in my chair. The silence in the kitchen was heavy, but it wasn't lonely anymore. It felt powerful. "If you can afford a VIP suite for her," I whispered to the empty room, "you don't need my $300. And you certainly don't need my credit score." I picked up the phone. My hands weren't shaking. I didn't feel guilty. I dialed the number for the insurance agent first. His name was Bob, and he's known me for 20 years. "Hi, Bob. It's Peggy Martinez." I said, "Peggy, how are you?" "How was the surgery?" he asked cheerfully. "It was enlightening, Bob," I said. "Listen, I need to make a change to my policy. Effective immediately." "Sure, what are we adding?" "We're subtracting," I said, my voice flat and businesslike. "I want to split the policy. I want to keep my house and my car on my account. I want you to remove Eddie and Eugenia's vehicles and their home from my billing. Completely." There was a pause on the line. "Peggy, are you sure? If we split the bundle, they lose the multi-line discount. Their rates will go up significantly, and they'll be billed directly." "I understand," I said. "Do it." "Okay." Bob sounded hesitant. "I'll have to send them a notification that their coverage under your payment plan is ending in 30 days. They'll need to secure their own payment method." "That's fine," I said. "Send it." I hung up. That was $300 back in my pocket every month. Next, I called the bank. This one was harder. You can't just erase a signature, but I knew the refinancing paperwork was pending. I asked for the loan department. "I'm calling regarding the refinancing application for the Ford truck." I told the loan officer. "I am the co-signer, Peggy Martinez." "Yes, Mrs. Martinez, we are just waiting for your signature to lock in the new rate." "I won't be signing," I said. "Excuse me?" "I am withdrawing my application to co-sign the refinance." I stated clearly, "I am also formally requesting that my name be removed from any joint liability moving forward. I understand. This means the loan will revert to the primary borrower's terms." "Mrs. Martinez, without your credit backing, The interest rate will adjust to the current market rate for his credit tier. The payment could almost double. I thought about the VIP suite. I thought about the memory foam topper. I thought about the exhaustion. I'm sure he can handle it, I said. He's doing very well for himself. I hung up the phone. I sat there for a moment, listening to the hum of the refrigerator. I didn't call Eddie to warn him. I didn't text Eugenia to explain why. Explanations are for people who respect you. Warnings are for people who care about your consequences. They had told me to stay in bed, to save money. Well, I was doing exactly that. I was saving my money. I took the file box, closed the elastic strap, and put it back on the shelf. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It wasn't heartbreak. It was relief. I went to the fridge, poured myself a glass of iced tea, and sat down to watch the sunset from my kitchen window. The silence in the house didn't feel empty anymore. It felt peaceful. I had just launched a missile into the center of their financial life, and they wouldn't even know it until the bills arrived in the mail. I took a sip of tea. It tasted sweet. 3 weeks is a strange amount of time. It's long enough for a surgical scar to start fading from angry red to a dull pink. It's long enough to learn how to navigate your kitchen with a cane instead of a walker. And as I discovered, it is exactly the amount of time it takes for the billing cycle of the American banking system to catch up with reality. The first 2 weeks of my silent withdrawal were peaceful. I focused on my physical therapy. I did my leg lifts. I iced my hip. For the first time in years, I wasn't worrying about anyone else's problems. I wasn't checking my bank account to see if I could afford to fix someone's furnace or pay for a transmission. My bank account was actually growing. It was a modest growth, just the absence of money leaving, but to me, it felt like winning the lottery. I knew the storm was coming, though. I knew the Postal Service was carrying little white envelopes that would act like grenades when they landed in my son's mailbox. I just didn't know exactly when the pin would be pulled. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon. I was sitting on my back porch, enjoying a cup of tea, the good brand, which I had bought again, and watching a cardinal peck at the bird feeder. My phone was sitting on the table next to me. When it rang, the screen lit up with the word son. I didn't jump. My heart didn't race. I took a slow sip of my tea, set the cup down, and let it ring 3 times. I wanted to make sure I was composed. I wanted to make sure my voice wouldn't waver. I slid my thumb across the screen. Hello, Mom. Eddie's voice wasn't just loud. It was frantic. He sounded like he was running a marathon. Mom, are you there? Thank God. Listen, something terrible has happened. I think your bank has been hacked or something. You need to check your accounts right now. Calm down, Eddie, I said, leaning back in my chair. What are you talking about? My accounts are fine. No, they're not, he practically shouted. I just got a letter from the auto lender. They're saying the refinancing application was withdrawn. Withdrawn, Mom. They're reverting the loan to the default interest rate. It's jumping from 4% to 12%. Do you know what that does to my monthly payment? It nearly doubles it. It's going to be almost $800 a month just for the truck. I stayed silent. I let his panic fill the airwaves. And that's not even the worst part, he continued, not waiting for me to speak. I got a notification from the insurance company today. I went to print out a proof of insurance card for the registration renewal, and the system flagged it. It says coverage terminated for my car and Eugenia's car. It says we've been removed from the policy. Mom, we've been driving around for days with no insurance. If we had gotten into an accident, we would have lost everything. He paused to take a breath, and then his voice softened, shifting from panic to confusion. Did you make a mistake, Mom? Did you press the wrong button online or something? Maybe the bank made an error. You need to call them right now and fix this before the payment is due on the 1st. I looked out at the cardinal. He was struggling to crack a sunflower seed. It wasn't a mistake, Eddie, I said. My voice was even, steady. What? I said it wasn't a mistake. I didn't click the wrong button. I called the bank and the insurance agent personally. There was a silence on the other end, so profound I could hear the static of the line. I don't understand. Eddie stammered. Why would you do that? You know we need that refinancing. You know we can't afford the individual insurance rates. We have the bundle discount because of you. Well, that's just it, Eddie, I said. I looked at my budget, and frankly, I'm broke. I let the word hang there. Broke. The same word he had used to deny me my surgery. Broke, Eddie repeated, sounding dumbfounded. But it's just a signature, Mom. It doesn't cost you anything to sign the loan paper. It costs me my credit capacity, Eddie, and the insurance costs me $300 a month. I checked the records. You haven't paid me for your share in over a year. We were going to pay you back, he protested. You know how tight things have been. We were just waiting for my bonus. The economy is tough for everyone, Eddie, I said, repeating the speech he gave me 3 weeks ago. Groceries are up. Gas is up. My fixed income just can't stretch that far anymore. I have to prioritize my own bills. I'm sure you understand. But you can't just cut us off, he yelled. Mom, $800 for the truck, plus insurance. That's over $1,000 a month we didn't budget for. We don't have that kind of money. I guess you'll have to make some cuts then. I said, maybe sell the truck or cancel a vacation. Suddenly, there was a scuffling sound on the other end. The phone was being snatched away. Give me that. It was Eugenia, and she wasn't panicking. She was furious. Her voice was sharp enough to cut glass. Peggy, she snapped, what do you think you're doing? Is this some kind of sick joke? You're trying to teach us a lesson because we couldn't pay for your hip. Hello, Eugenia, I said. Don't hello me, she screamed. This is vindictive. You are putting your own son in financial ruin over a grudge. We are family. Families help each other. I agree. I said, families do help each other. But I seem to be the only one doing the helping for the last 10 years. We helped you, she lied. We visit. We let you see the grandkids. And this is how you repay us. By sabotaging our credit, by leaving us exposed without insurance. How could you do this without even telling us? You didn't even give us a warning. I didn't think I needed to, I replied. I thought you would be happy for me. Happy, she scoffed. Why would I be happy that we are drowning? Because I'm following your advice, Eugenia, I said, my voice dropping an octave, becoming deadly serious. My advice? What are you talking about? You gave me some excellent financial advice 3 weeks ago, I said. Do you remember? I asked for help, and you told me exactly what to do. I took a breath. I wanted to make sure I got the words exactly right. You told me to just stay in bed. You said, you'll save us some money if you don't move around so much. Well, Eugenia, I took that to heart. I'm staying in bed. I'm staying right here in my little house. And by cutting off your insurance and your loan, I am saving myself a lot of money. Just like you said. The line went dead silent. She remembered. I knew she remembered because the rage in her breathing stopped, replaced by a sudden, shocked gasp. You're doing this because of what I said? She whispered. I'm doing this because if you have enough money to put your mother in a VIP suite with champagne and memory foam, you certainly have enough money to pay for your own car insurance. I said, I saw you, Eugenia. I saw the balloons. I saw the suite. So don't tell me you're broke. You're just broke when it comes to me. Peggy, wait, she started, her voice suddenly trembling. I have to go now, I said. I'm very tired. I think I'll go take a nap. It's free after all. I pulled the phone away from my ear and pressed the red button. The call ended. I sat there in the silence of my backyard. My hands were shaking a little bit now, but it wasn't from fear. It was the adrenaline of finally, after all these years, standing up. I looked at the cardinal again. He had finally cracked the seed open and was eating the kernel inside. I finished my tea. It was the best cup of tea I had ever tasted. I didn't have to wait long. Desperation has a way of making people move fast, especially when their lifestyle is on the line. Less than 20 minutes after I hung up the phone, I heard tires screeching in my driveway. It wasn't a polite arrival. It sounded like a panic attack on four wheels. I was sitting in the living room, my cane resting against my knee. I hadn't moved. I hadn't turned on the lights, even though the evening shadows were stretching across the floor. I wanted them to see me sitting in the dim light. I wanted them to see exactly what staying in bed looked like. The pounding on the door was aggressive. It rattled the frame. "Mom, open up. We need to talk." It was Eddie. His voice cracked, sounding more like a frightened teenager than a 40-year-old man. I took my time standing up. I gripped the handle of my cane and walked slowly to the door. I didn't rush. I unlocked the deadbolt with a loud, deliberate click and swung the door open. They stood there on the porch, breathless and flushed. Eddie looked like he hadn't slept in a week. His hair was messy, and his shirt was untucked. Eugenia was standing slightly behind him, her arms crossed tight over her chest, her face twisted into a scowl that was equal parts anger and fear. "You can't do this," Eddie blurted out before I could even say hello. He stepped into the foyer without asking, forcing me to back up. "Do you have any idea what you've set in motion? The bank called again on the drive over. They are threatening to repossess the truck by Friday if the financing isn't secured." "Friday, Mom. I use that truck for work. And the insurance." Eugenia chimed in, stepping inside and slamming the door behind her. "We got an email saying we are uninsured as of midnight. Do you know how illegal that is? You are exposing us to liability. If we get into a fender bender, we lose everything." I looked at them. I looked at the panic in their eyes. It was real fear. For the first time in a long time, they were facing the consequences of their own choices, and they were terrified. "I'm not exposing you to anything," I said calmly, leaning on my cane. "I simply stopped paying for you. There is a difference." "But why now?" Eddie shouted, throwing his hands up. "Why pick the worst possible moment? We are struggling, Mom. We are family. How can you look at your own son and let him drown? Doesn't that mean anything to you? Family is supposed to support each other." "Family," I repeated the word. It tasted bitter. "That's a funny word coming from you, Eddie, because 3 weeks ago, when I asked for help, I wasn't family. I was a burden. I was an expense you couldn't afford. That's different." Eugenia snapped. "We told you we didn't have the cash flow." "Stop it," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it was hard enough to make them both freeze. "Stop lying. Just stop it. I'm done with the stories." I walked past them into the kitchen and pointed to the chair where I had sat alone for weeks. "You say you didn't have the cash flow," I said, turning to face them. "But I saw you. You said that on the phone." Eugenia said, her eyes darting around the room. "I don't know what you think you saw, but I saw the balloons. I cut her off. Gold and silver. Get well soon. I saw the gift basket, the one with the imported chocolates and the sparkling cider. I saw the VIP suite in the East Wing. Room 402, the presidential suite." Eddie's face went pale. The color drained right out of him, leaving him looking gray and sickly. He opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out. "I was there, Eddie," I continued, relentless. "I was in the hospital. I was in the recovery ward, shuffling down the hallway in a shared gown, trying to learn how to walk again. And I saw you walking into a room that costs $2,000 a night. I saw you laughing. I saw you pampering a woman who was there for exhaustion. I stepped closer to them. My hip was grinding bone on bone. I said, pointing to my leg. I was in agony. I asked you for $3,000. Just $3,000. And you told me to rot in bed because you were broke. But you had thousands of dollars to treat Eugenia's mother like a queen because she was tired from playing bridge. The silence in the room was suffocating. The air felt heavy. Eugenia finally spoke. She didn't apologize. She dug in. That was different money, she stammered, her voice shrill. That came from a different account. And besides, my mother is fragile. She has sensitive nerves. She couldn't handle a regular room. She needed peace and quiet. And I didn't. I asked. I needed surgery, Eugenia. Actual surgery. But I wasn't worth the investment, was I? It's not about worth. Eddie pleaded, trying to grab my hand. I pulled away. Mom, please. It was complicated. We owed her a favor. We were just trying to keep the peace with her. We intended to help you later, once things settled down. You intended to help me later, I scoffed. When? When I was in a wheelchair. When I lost my house. We are here now. Eddie cried. We are asking for a truce. Just sign the loan paper, Mom. Please. Just sign it so we can keep the truck. We can figure out the insurance later. But don't take the truck. If I lose the truck, I can't get to the job sites. If I can't work, we lose the house. Is that what you want? Do you want your grandchildren to be homeless? It was the ultimate guilt trip. The weaponization of the grandchildren. He was using my love for those kids as a hostage. I looked at my son. I saw the fear, yes, but I also saw the entitlement. He truly believed that despite everything, I would fold. He believed that if he pushed hard enough, the good mother would come back and fix it. But the good mother was gone. She died in the hallway of the East Wing. I don't want anyone to be homeless, I said quietly, but I can't help you. You won't help us. Eugenia yelled. I can't. I corrected her. You see, I have to be very careful with my finances now. I have to save up, because the next time I have a medical emergency, I know for a fact that I am on my own. I have to build my own VIP suite fund, because my family certainly won't provide one. So that's it. Eddie stared at me, his eyes wide. You're just going to let us crash? Over a grudge. It's not a grudge, Eddie, I said. It's a boundary. I am done subsidizing a lifestyle that excludes me. I am done paying for your truck so you can drive past my house to visit your other mother in luxury. I walked to the front door and opened it wide. The evening air drifted in, cool and crisp. You need money? I asked, looking at them. You need a co-signer? You need a safety net. They looked at me with a sliver of hope. Go ask Beatrice, I said. Eugenia gasped. My mother? We can't ask her. Why not? I smiled, a cold, thin smile. You invested thousands in her comfort. You made sure she had the best care, the best room, the best food. You've been very good to her. Surely, she will be happy to return the favor. She's the one with the VIP treatment. Go ask her to co-sign your loan. She won't do it. Eugenia whispered, the truth slipping out. She doesn't do things like that. She says her money is for her retirement. Well, I said, gripping the doorframe. It sounds like she and I finally have something in common. Get out, I said. Mom. Eddie started. Get out. I raised my voice for the first time, slamming the tip of my cane on the floor. Get out of my house. Go figure it out. Go drive that truck until they come and take it. But do not come back here asking for a penny until you have learned what the word broke actually means. They flinched. They looked at me like I was a stranger. And in a way, I was. I was no longer the Peggy They used. They walked out. They moved slowly, like people walking away from a funeral. I watched them get into that shiny, expensive truck, the one they hadn't paid for, the one I had secured. I watched them back out of the driveway. I didn't wait for them to leave the street. I closed the door. I locked the deadbolt. I slid the chain lock into place. I stood in the hallway listening to the silence. My heart was pounding, but my hip didn't hurt at all. For the first time all day, I stood tall, and I didn't feel any pain. Silence is a powerful thing. For the first few days after I kicked Eddie and Eugenia out of my house, the silence was heavy. I kept expecting the phone to ring. I kept expecting another knock on the door, another plea, another guilt trip about how I was ruining their lives. But the phone didn't ring, and the door stayed shut. The silence wasn't because they had accepted my decision. It was because they were too busy trying to stop the dam from breaking. But as anyone who has ever ignored a leak knows, once the water starts rising, it's only a matter of time before the whole foundation washes away. The first domino fell on a Friday morning, just like Eddie had predicted. I didn't see it happen, but my neighbor, Mrs. Gable, certainly did. She called me over the fence while I was watering my hydrangeas. She told me a tow truck had shown up at Eddie's house at 6 in the morning. It wasn't a polite visit. It was the repo man. They hooked up that shiny, oversized pickup truck, the one that was supposed to be the symbol of Eddie's success, and dragged it down the street while the alarm blared. Mrs. Gable said Eddie ran out in his boxers, shouting and waving his arms, but the driver didn't even slow down. The bank doesn't care about excuses. The bank only cares about the signature on the line, and mine wasn't there anymore. Without the truck, Eddie couldn't get to his construction management sites. He tried to rent a car, but with his credit score tanking because of the missed payments and the repo on his record, the rental agencies wanted deposits he couldn't afford. He missed 3 days of work. By the next Tuesday, he was let go. That was the second domino. The third one was the house. They had bought a place they could barely afford on 2 incomes, assuming that the family safety net, me, would catch them if they slipped. But with Eddie out of work and the insurance bills piling up on Eugenia's credit card, they couldn't make the mortgage. They didn't even make it to foreclosure. They panic sold. They put the house on the market for a quick cash sale, which is real estate talk for, "We are desperate. Please take this off our hands." They sold it for less than they owed. After paying off the bank and the fees, they walked away with nothing but a few boxes of clothes and the bitter taste of failure. And that is when the real tragedy, or perhaps the comedy, depending on how you look at it, began. They had nowhere to go. They had burned the bridge with me. They had insulted me, used me, and then tried to manipulate me. They knew the door to my little house was locked tight. So they had to turn to their only other option. They had to turn to the VIP. They went to Beatrice. Now, you have to understand something about Eugenia's mother. Beatrice is a woman who loves to be treated like a queen, but she rules like a tyrant. She was happy to let Eddie and Eugenia spend thousands of dollars on her hospital suite. She was happy to eat the imported chocolates and accept the balloons. She loved the attention, but Beatrice didn't get to be comfortable by spending her own money. She got there by hoarding it. I heard the details from my cousin Linda, whose daughter works at the hair salon where Beatrice gets her weekly blowout. Apparently, Beatrice wasn't exactly thrilled to see her daughter and son-in-law standing on her doorstep with suitcases and no job. "We just need a place to crash for a few weeks, Mom," Eugenia had begged, "just until Eddie finds a new gig." Beatrice didn't offer them the guest room. She didn't offer them the master suite. She looked at them over her reading glasses and laid down the law. "You can stay," Beatrice told them, "but this isn't a charity hotel. If you want to live under my roof, you contribute. She wasn't asking for a little help with groceries. She demanded rent. She told them they could have the small spare room in the basement, the one that used to be a storage closet and smells like damp earth, but it would cost them $800 a month. 800. Eddie had stammered. But we're family. And this is my retirement. Beatrice had snapped back. I'm on a fixed income, just like Peggy. Isn't that what you told her? That the economy is tough. The irony must have tasted like ash in their mouths. But the rent was just the beginning. Beatrice, now that she had help in the house, decided she didn't need to pay for her cleaning lady or her landscaper anymore. She fired them the next day. Eugenia, you can do the floors and the bathrooms, Beatrice instructed. And I expect dinner on the table at 6 sharp. No fatty foods. I'm watching my cholesterol. And Eddie, she pointed a manicured finger at my son. The lawn looks disgraceful. And the gutters are full. Since you're not working, you can earn your keep. So that is where they are now. My son, who drove a $40,000 truck and told me he was too broke to help his mother walk, is now mowing his mother-in-law's lawn in the heat of the day. He is cleaning her gutters. He is fixing her leaky faucets. He is doing all the handyman work he used to be too busy to do for me. And Eugenia, the woman who told me to just stay in bed to save money, she isn't staying in bed. She is waking up at dawn to make Beatrice's herbal tea. She is scrubbing Beatrice's toilets. She is washing Beatrice's silk robes by hand because the machine is too rough on the fabric. They are living in a basement with no windows, sleeping on a pull-out couch that has a bar in the middle that digs into your back. They are paying rent to a woman who has plenty of money but refuses to share it. They are servants in the house of the woman they treated like royalty. I ran into Beatrice at the grocery store yesterday. I was walking down the aisle, my cane clicking softly on the floor, moving better than I have in years. She saw me and waved, looking delightedly smug. "Oh, Peggy," she called out. "It's so lovely to see you. You know, having the kids stay with me has been such a blessing." "Has it?" I asked, picking up a carton of the expensive organic eggs. "Oh, yes," she beamed. "My house has never been cleaner, and Eddie is finally useful. You really should have been stricter with them, Peggy. They just needed a little discipline. They wait on me hand and foot. It's the least they can do after all the stress they caused me." She didn't know the whole story. She didn't know why they were there. She just knew she had won. "I'm glad it's working out for you, Beatrice," I said. And I meant it. They always did want to give you the VIP treatment. I'm glad they finally get to do it every single day. I walked away, leaving her standing there by the bakery section. I walked out to my car, my paid-off car, and drove to my quiet, peaceful house. I thought about Eddie and Eugenia in that basement. I thought about them realizing that they had spent years investing in the wrong mother. They had poured their money and their affection into a bottomless pit, and now they were stuck at the bottom of it. They wanted to save money. Well, Beatrice was certainly helping them do that. She wasn't letting them spend a dime on anything but her. It wasn't revenge. I didn't make Beatrice treat them that way. I didn't force them to move in with her. I just stepped out of the way and let gravity do its work. And gravity, as it turns out, is a very harsh mistress. 6 months have passed since I watched my son's truck get towed away and closed my front door on the life I used to know. If you had told me a year ago that I would be living alone, estranged from my only child, and happier than I have been in decades, I would have told you that you were crazy. I would have told you that a mother's place is with her family, no matter the cost. But I've learned that sometimes the cost is just too high. My life looks very different today. The first change you'd notice is the way I walk. That gnawing, grinding pain in my hip is gone. I had the surgery. I did the rehab on my own dime and on my own time, and now I walk with a stride that surprises even me. I don't just shuffle. around the kitchen anymore. I joined a group called the Silver Striders. We meet 3 times a week at the park. We walk 3 miles, rain or shine, and then we go for coffee. It turns out there are a lot of women just like me, women who spent their lives giving and giving until they were empty, only to realize that the people taking from them never learned how to say thank you. We talk about our kids, sure, but we also talk about books and travel and politics. I have friends now, real friends, not people who only call when they need a co-signer. My finances have healed, too. It's amazing how quickly your savings account grows when you aren't paying for 3 adults instead of 1. I replaced my old, drafty windows last month. I paid cash. I didn't have to ask anyone for help, and I didn't have to worry about a family emergency draining the fund before the contractor arrived. But the biggest change isn't in my bank account or my hip. It's in my head. The guilt is gone. That heavy, suffocating blanket of, I should be doing more, has finally lifted. Yesterday, a letter arrived in the mail. It wasn't a bill. It was a plain white envelope with no return address. But I recognized the handwriting immediately. It was Eddie's. The script was a little shaky, not the bold, confident scrawl he used to have. I sat down at my kitchen table with a letter opener. My hands were steady. I sliced it open and unfolded the single sheet of lined notebook paper. It wasn't a demand. It wasn't a threat. It was a surrender. Dear Mom, it began. I don't know if you'll read this, and I don't blame you if you throw it away, but I needed to write it. You were right. You were right about everything. Living with Beatrice it's a nightmare. She charges us for every little thing. She inspects the cleaning I do like a drill sergeant. She made Eugenia cry yesterday because the toast was too dark. We are miserable. We are working so hard just to keep a roof over our heads in a basement that smells like mold. I miss home. I miss you. I miss the way you never kept score. We took you for granted, Mom. We thought you would always be there to fix it. I'm sorry. I'm so incredibly sorry. I read the letter twice. I looked for the request. I looked for the line that said, "Can we come home?" or "Can you send us $50?" It wasn't there explicitly, but the tone was dripping with it. He was fishing. He was hoping his apology would be the key that unlocked my door again. He was hoping the good mother was still in here, ready to rush in and save him from the bad mother he had chosen. I put the paper down. I looked out the window at my garden, which was blooming in full color because I finally had the time and money to tend to it. I felt a pang of sadness. Of course I did. He is my son. No mother wants to know her child is living in a damp basement being yelled at about toast. I felt a tug in my heart, a little voice whispering, "You have the room. You have the money now. You could save them." But then I remembered the VIP suite. I remembered Eugenia telling me to stay in bed. I remembered the years of unpaid loans and the expectation that I should set myself on fire just to keep them warm. If I rescued them now, what would they learn? They would learn that if they cry hard enough, I will fold. They would learn that my boundaries are temporary. Beatrice, in her own cruel, selfish way, was teaching them the lesson I never could. She was teaching them that life is expensive, that shelter is earned, and that respect is a requirement, not an option. I pulled a piece of my own stationery from the drawer, the nice stuff with my initials on it. I uncapped my pen. I didn't write a long letter. I didn't lecture him. I didn't rub it in. I simply wrote, "Dear Eddie, I accept your apology. It takes courage to admit when you are wrong. I am glad you are learning the value of hard work and responsibility. Those are lessons that will serve you well for the rest of your life. I hope you and Eugenia learn to stand on your own 2 feet, just like I had to. Love, Mom." I folded it, put it in an envelope, and stamped it. I didn't include a check. I didn't include an invitation to Sunday dinner. I walked down to the mailbox at the end of my driveway. The sun was shining, and the air smelled like fresh-cut grass. I dropped the letter in the slot and listened to it fall. It was the sound of a chapter closing. I checked my watch. It was 11:30. The Silver Striders were meeting for lunch at that new Italian place downtown. I had heard their lasagna was excellent, and I was going to order the big piece with a side of garlic bread and a glass of wine. I grabbed my purse and my keys. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the sweet, clean air of freedom. I used to think my job was to be the savior. I used to think my worth was measured in how much I could endure for others. But I know better now. You cannot save people who are determined to drown you. And you certainly cannot afford to pay for someone else's luxury while you are paying for your own survival. Your boundaries are the most expensive thing you own. Don't let anyone bankrupt them. Did you like the story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 4 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story.